The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. There was a man named Lazarus who lived in the village of Bethany with the two sisters, Mary and Martha, and he was ill. It was the same Mary, the sister of the sick man Lazarus, who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. The sisters sent out this message to Jesus: "Lord, the man you love is ill." On receiving the message, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death, but in God's glory. And through it, the Son of Man will be glorified." Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And yet, when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed where he was for 2 more days before saying to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea." The disciples said, "Rabbi, it is not long since the Jews wanted to stone you. Are you going back again?" And Jesus replied, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? A man can walk in the daytime without stumbling, because he has the light of this world to see by. But if he walks at night, he stumbles, because there is no light to guide him." He said that, and then added, "Our friend Lazarus is resting. I'm going to wake him." And the disciples said to him, "Lord, if he is able to rest, then surely he's getting better." The phrase Jesus used referred to the death of Lazarus, but they thought he meant by rest that he was sleeping. So Jesus put it plainly: "Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there, because now you will believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, known as the twin, said to the other disciples, "Let us go too and die with him." On arriving, Jesus found Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days already. Bethany is only about 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to sympathize with them over their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus had come, she went to meet him. Mary remained sitting in the house. And Martha said to Jesus, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, whatever you ask God, he will grant you." "Your brother," said Jesus to her, "will rise again." And Martha said, "I know he will rise again at the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. If anyone believes in me, even though he dies, he will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die." "Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she said. "I believe you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who has come into this world." When she said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in a low voice, "The Master is here and wants to see you." Hearing this, Mary got up quickly and went to him. And Jesus had not yet come into the village. He was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were in the house sympathizing with Mary saw her get up so quickly and go out, they followed her, thinking that she was going to the tomb to weep there. And Mary went to Jesus, and as soon as she saw him, she threw herself at his feet, saying, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." At the sight of her tears and those of the Jews who followed her, Jesus said in great distress, with a sigh that came straight from his heart, "Where have you put him?" And they said, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. And the Jews said, "See how much he loved him." But there were some who remarked, "He opened the eyes of the blind man. Could he not have prevented this man's death?" Still sighing, Jesus reached the tomb. It was a cave with a stone to close the opening. And Jesus said, "Take the stone away." And Martha said, "Lord, by now he will smell. This is the fourth day." And Jesus replied, "Have I not told you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And then Jesus lifted his eyes to heaven and he said, "Father, I thank you for hearing my prayer. I knew indeed that you always hear me, but I speak for the sake of all these who stand around me, so that they may believe it was you who sent me." And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, here, come out." The dead man came out, his feet and his hands bound with bands of stuff and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, "Unbind him, let him go free." And many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what he did believed in him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The Gospel of John is resting on 7 great signs. And each of the great signs are pointing to the identity of Jesus. So that by the time we've reached the end of the Gospel, we have a clear sense of who this man Jesus Christ is. The first of the signs, of course, was the wedding feast in Cana, where the water was multiplied. Another sign that was mentioned here was a man born blind. There was a cripple who was restored. And each of these signs tell us something about who Jesus is. But this is the greatest of all his signs. Because here he does what is unthinkable. We see in the letter, in the prophet Ezekiel, in our first reading, that the prophet says something that seems so strange. There's this valley of dry bones. And the prophet was told by God to prophesy over those bones. Because he said, "Your bones are dried up, but I will put fresh sinew and heart into you." And the text we have says, "And the Lord says this, I am going to open your graves. I mean to raise you from your graves, my people, and lead you back to the soil of Israel. And you will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves, when I raise you from your graves, my people. And I should put fresh spirit in you, and you will live." What is the greatest fear that you have? What's your greatest fear? Oh, I think this rhetorical, and what's your greatest fear? You know, our greatest fear revolves around some form of death or dying. Either physically, emotionally, reputationally, financially, relationally. It revolves around the unexpected loss that we have absolutely no control over whatsoever. Correct? Yeah? The fact that this world seems a little bit out of our control. And you know, we so good, huh? We spend so much time doing such foolish things to help us to believe that we're really in control of it. Not so? Not so? We spend all this time, all this energy, all this sweat to convince ourselves with our stupidity that we actually have some control. And that in this control that we have, you know, there are good reasons why things happen. And we tell ourselves all these foolish things. in Beirut, where there was this really bad war going on. At one stage, one side of a street got completely gutted by bombs and other things. And people living on that street said, you see, I always knew you should never build on that side of the street, And they made up this foolish rule to convince themselves that was not an arbitrary act. The act was because they built on the wrong side of the road. We built on the right side, and that's why we are okay. It's another way of trying to shield ourselves from the truth. To perfect that. If you want your end to be heaven, then we have all of the Gospels, the tradition of the church helping us to understand what that means. If you're going to begin with the end in mind, then this text today tells us what the end is. When Jesus says that I am the resurrection and the life. If anyone believes in me, even though he dies, he will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. And then he adds, do you believe this? Do you believe this? You see, brothers and sisters, if we believe this, then our living has to be different. If we believe this, we can't be about just eking out an existence here on earth. If we believe this, then our living has to be us being configured to what he is asking of us. If we believe that he is the resurrection and the life, then there is no fear of death. Death, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? If we believe this, brothers and sisters, then we have to believe that whatever comes our way in life, as difficult, as wonderful, as disastrous as it might be, that God is there in the midst of it, and he is the resurrection and the life. He is the resurrection and the life. And if we believe in him, even if we die, we will have eternal life. Our text today has all of these wonderful complexities in it. If we look at the text from the very human perspective first, what we see is Jesus with his disciples somewhere outside of Judea, and there is a tension between him and the Jewish people or the people in Jerusalem, and he knows that if he heads back to Jerusalem, he will be under threat. Is he afraid? Does he make that fear determine his action? Oh, I ain't know, yeah. Does his actions give way to his fear? Or does his actions give way to the end that he has in mind? How often do our actions give way to our fear? How often? How often do we allow our fear to lead and to rule us and to determine what we do and what we do not do? If I say this, then these people might be offended. If I say that, then this one will be vexed. If I do this, if I do that. And therefore we do by what we try to stay away from and avoid the difficulties of life, as opposed to living with the end in mind and recognizing that even if we die, we will rise again with him. Even if we die, we will rise again with him. So Jesus is seeing the problems in Jerusalem when his friend Lazarus is now ill. He waits 2 more days. I want you to hear this, How many times have you complained that you're praying and like God's sleeping? Come on now. Talk to me now. How many times but like, Lord, like you sleeping or what? You ain't hear me praying or what? And you know the worst thing about this text? The text says, it's because he loved Lazarus so much that he waited. How you like that one? It's because he loved Lazarus so much, that's why he waited some more time. Huh? That's why he waited some more time. You know, imagine that you're ill, you're on your death's door, you call the doctor, and the doctor, who is your good friend, says, how sick you think? Oh, you think you're nearly dying? Okay, I'm going to wait 2 more days before I come to you because I love you so much. Huh? Can you see this? You see, he had his end in mind. And the end in mind for him was that the glory of God would be seen. That was his end. He wanted the glory of God to be seen. And so he waited a few days while Lazarus would die. And when he actually reached to the village of Bethany, he knew that by then Lazarus was dead. And we see in our text, he had died 4 days. 4 days. Mary and Martha, we met in the Gospel of Luke, and in that Gospel, we know that wonderful text with Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus and Martha fussing about everything that had to be done and vexed because his sister ain't fussing with her. Oh, yeah. Okay. All the Marthas, just own your Martha-ness, please. All your Marys, just own your Maryness, please. Okay, good. Now we can get past that one. We all right with that? But there's so much in character here from what we met them in Luke, huh? Because as soon as Jesus arrived, who reached by Jesus? Martha, busy as ever, reached to Jesus and saying to Jesus, you know, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. He would not have died. And Jesus is saying to her, but Martha, do you not believe I am the resurrection and the life? Do you believe? And Martha, who we see as this busybody fussing, gives a profession of faith equal only to Peter at this stage. Only Peter sees past all of it to the heart of who he is. And Martha says, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world. It's Martha who sees past this. As we look at the human implications of the text, what we see here is that this family are friends with Jesus. Huh? And there's a wonderful friendship that is here, that Jesus enters into their life, enters into their family, and in a real way engages with them in very deep and very profound ways. And what betrays that is not only Mary's coming out to meet him, and Martha coming out to meet him, and Mary coming out to meet him, but we also have here the shortest verse in the Gospels, the shortest sentence. Jesus wept. Yeah? Jesus wept. It's the most amazing verse. Why? Because it says the relationship he has with Lazarus. That he has this profound relationship with him. And as Mary and Martha are weeping, and the Jews or the women are weeping, Jesus also weeps. So all of those who say that big men don't cry, well, you know the Bible tell you you're wrong. You know the Bible say you're wrong. I think Jesus is the biggest man that ever lived. So if he could cry, well, you know, the rest of us could just follow in his shadows. Jesus wept. And here we are seeing into the humanity of Jesus. The friendship he has, and the fact that he misses his friend Lazarus. And this is really the agony of the Christian over death. Our faith tells us there is a resurrection and that we will meet our beloved when we die, and we will meet one day again. But our humanity tells us that we miss this one. And because we miss this one, we weep. And Jesus' weeping says to us that we too can weep. We too can mourn. Remember, he's the one who says, blessed are those who mourn, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn. And he's demonstrating here by his weeping, he's recognizing the loss that he's experiencing. But he's not allowing that loss to debilitate him and to stop him from the end that he has in mind. So as we see the humanity in the text, what we recognize is this tremendous relationship and this ongoing movement between the two sisters and the brother and Jesus. But as we look at the divinity of the text, something else is happening. Because we see in the beginning that Martha recognizes that Jesus can raise from the dead. Martha said, I know you will rise again at the resurrection on the last day. I know that he will rise again at the resurrection on the last day. So the Jewish belief was that at the end of time, there will be a big resurrection and everyone will come back to life. And that's why in our creed it says, we believe in the resurrection of the body. Yeah, getting back your body, Yeah, you're getting back your body. Well, not this one. Not this one, thank God. Not this one. Yeah, thank God. Not this one. But you're getting back our body. We believe in the resurrection of the body. And that's what Martha is playing with. That yes, we will see him again at the end. When all will rise again. And when there will be the great separation between good and bad. We will see him then again. And Jesus is saying something far more particular than that. He says, I am the resurrection and I am the life. If anyone believes in me, even though he dies, he will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Do you? Do you believe this? Do you believe this? You see, brothers and sisters, if we believe this, then we can't allow fear to dominate our life choices. If we believe this, we can't be hemmed in by our fear. We can't be hemmed in and constrained and made immobile by our fear. If we believe this. Because if we believe this, then we know that there is no penalty. There is no consequence that fear could put our way that Jesus has not yet overcome. When Jesus says that I am the resurrection and the life, he's saying something about who he is, and this is before he dies, and this is before his resurrection. And he's saying something to each one of us. Each one of us. When Jesus calls forth Lazarus, and he says, Lazarus, come forth. Did they believe that he would come forth? Did they believe? Did they believe? Do you believe? Do you believe? See, brothers and sisters, faith spins on this text in a most amazing way. Because, yes, they knew he would be smelling. It's the fourth day. According to Jewish custom, the soul will leave the body on the third day. By the fourth day, decomposition is already taking place. So they know all of this. They know the science. But what they don't know is the faith. What they don't yet understand is who Jesus is. And brothers and sisters, we know the science. We know the practicality. We know all the good reasons. We know why this and why that and why the other. But what we don't yet know is who Jesus is. Because if we know who Jesus is, then whatever that situation of death that stares us in the face, that has us immobile, that has us paralyzed, that has us, ready to surrender, we also know that he is the resurrection and he is the life. When he calls forth Lazarus into life, Lazarus comes all bound up with all the cloth in his hands and in his feet, and then he says, unbind him. Unbind him. And then he has to be unbound and set free. Lazarus was raised from the dead, not in the way that Jesus was. Because when Jesus was raised from the dead, he will not die again. Poor Lazarus, no. Poor Lazarus have to face death again, eh? You never thought about that? Poor Lazarus has to go back now, some stage later in his life, and face death one more time. One more time. He has to go back now to face death. But what he's offering to you and me is that even when we die, we will rise again. To live understanding that Jesus overcomes death is to live our life differently. Remember, begin with the end in mind. To live knowing that Jesus has conquered death means that in that difficult relationship where it seems so impossible and where it seems as if there is no easy or good way out of this, where it seems like only death is wreaking here, that somewhere inside of there, the power of Jesus to bring life out of death is at work. If we would have the courage to do what he's asking of us. That takes courage. I am more and more convinced that our world is the way our world is because we lack courage. We lack courage. Our relationships are the way they are because we lack courage. If we do one good sorting out of stuff up front, we wouldn't keep doing it every single day. True or not true? We've allowed our nation to be the way it is because we lack courage. Why do we lack courage? Because we all want to protect ourselves. That's what we want. And what the text invites us to is to recognize that during this Lenten season, the reason why we're on this way, this pilgrimage to the cross, is because this God of ours has conquered even death. Death. Where is your sting? Death, where is your victory? As we enter into these last 2 weeks of this beautiful season of Lent, let us recommit ourselves to whatever we have taken up and choose to die to ourselves in little ways every single day, so that we, joining more and more and more with him, would recognize what in his passion we will see next week would lead us to giving of ourselves more and more to him in his victory over death. Amen.